What's up, y'all? My name is Ebony. I want to welcome you to another episode of the Adult Puberty Podcast. All right, y'all. So today we talking about the truth. So when I say the truth in this particular instance, I am talking about the truth that doesn't need a cosigner and the truth that is no respecter of persons, has no favoritism. That truth. All type of, truths, depending on who you talk to, their perspective, right? We're not getting into that. I'm keeping it simple and just talking about the truth, right? So even though I know that people suck, I still generally expect and assume that people are being truthful and honest, right? But the reality is that people lie a lot, right? So my theory is that, my theory is that either one, people don't know how to tell the truth, which sounds crazy, but like my friend said, depending on how you were raised, or two, people are scared of the consequences of the truth. Aside from like some horrible, evil stuff or some crime stuff, most of the time when there are consequences because of the truth, it's because somebody is not able or willing to accept the truth, right? So today I just want to get into, how to tell the truth, right? I think that sometimes we take some of this like life stuff and adult stuff for granted and just think that everybody knows. And the truth of the matter is that not everybody does know, right? Let's get into it. So how to tell the truth. First and foremost, let's talk about practicing being honest with ourselves daily. So if I'm not honest with myself, how likely is it that I'm going to be honest with you? It tells you something, right? So if I'm lying to myself, then why do I care about lying to somebody else, right? So I think that, you may be like, oh, well, I'm not that person. I don't lie to myself, yada, yada, yada. But I think that we lie to ourselves more than we think we do. So, for example, every time I am not honest about how I really feel, I'm lying to myself. Anytime I'm not honest about what it is that I really want or what it is that I really need, I'm lying to myself. Anytime I, am buttoning me up or not being my 100% authentic self, for the purpose of survival or peace, that's lying to yourself, right? When I refuse to accept the truth, that's lying to myself. I feel like, again, I am a firm believer in better relationships with others, starting with us. We need to, relate to ourselves and we need to be honest with ourselves first, right? So I say start there, asking yourself, how do you feel about everything? Not being like, oh, how do I feel about these pancakes? How do I feel? I'm not talking about that, right? That's petty. I'm talking about the stuff that matters, right? And only the stuff that matters. But starting there, how do you really feel, right? What is it that you really want? What is it that you really need, right? Are you being your authentic self, right? Or are you hiding a piece of yourself to make somebody else comfortable or whatever? And the last point I'll say about this is be kind to yourself, right? Like, don't sugarcoat anything, right? When you're being honest with yourself, but be kind to yourself, because a lot of times the truth by itself is like harsh enough. So you don't need the like negative self-talk or like the aggressive, like you just ain't, You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't need that. All right. So number 2, let go of the outcome after you tell the truth. So what I mean by that is you can't control how somebody feels or reacts to the truth after you say it. Like, that is not in your wheelhouse. That is not your responsibility. You have no control over that. So let it go, right? A lot of times we think that we have more control over certain things in life than we really do. When you think about the things that you actually have control over, I bet you the list is small. Oh, the other part of this is realizing that when you try to control an outcome, it's called being manipulative. And I know a lot of people are like, I'm not manipulative. If you try to control an outcome by omitting the truth, like telling part of the truth, just telling a straight up lie or whatever, even whether it's, for the good of yourself or this other person, that's still manipulative. So just to put it out there. And then number 3 is don't waste your time trying to figure out a way to say it, so that it'll soften it. Because more often than not, it doesn't even work, right? And a lot of times people have more of an issue with the truth itself than they do the delivery part, right? Now, I'm not saying be reckless with your mouth, right? All I'm saying is that as a general rule, when you are, talking in your regular tone and more on the calm spectrum, that tends to go over well versus being snappy or passive aggressive or angry when you deliver the truth. Now, sometimes it just happens. You know what I mean? You get in a heated argument. It's like, you know what? Boo, 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 whatevs. Being honest and telling the truth straight up is a daily practice. It just is. And I'm a truth person, right? It's still a daily practice. And then the last one is like a bonus. So I like to say practice being honest with strangers, right? So I don't know if you're that person who you just have random conversations with people kind of wherever you are and you kind of getting in conversations, boop-a-doop-a-doop. I mean, just being honest with strangers is a good place to start, right? Because more likely than not, you're not going to see them again, right? And it's just, again, being honest and being truthful is a muscle that you have to practice. And no matter how stupid it may seem, like Mr. Miyagi telling Daniel to do the wax on, wax off, there is a purpose in it. All right, so let's get into some tips to help you on your road to accepting the truth, right? And here I'm really talking about somebody telling you the truth and how, some things that you can kind of keep in mind, right, as you work on accepting the truth. So number 1, feel however you want to feel about the truth. From anywhere from happy to hurt and everything in between, nothing that you feel about the truth is wrong. And anybody who tells you that you feel wrong for feeling how you feel, they're wrong, because your feelings are your feelings, right? The caveat to that is, again, nobody else is responsible for your emotions, right? Like, it's my responsibility to tell you the truth and to be honest with you. It is not my responsibility about how you feel about or respond to the truth. I feel like a lot of times we just talk about the truth like it's just this great thing, and it is. But the thing that I don't think that we talk about enough is there are often a lot of unpleasant feelings about the truth or toward the truth. And so people sometimes have these unpleasant feelings about the truth. And then they kind of approach it like it's your fault that I'm feeling this way, right? Which I get what people are saying, right? You did this, and because you did this, I feel this, right? I get it. But I think in order for us to grow and move forward, we have to get out of that thinking, right? And I know trust me, it is easier said than done, but you don't have to like the truth in order to accept the truth or respect the truth. You just have to respect the fact that it is. You don't have to like it. That's not a requirement of the truth. Number 2, don't fill in the blanks or create a whole nother sub story based on the truth that you do know, right? Because a lot of times we may not have every single detail that we want, as if that was even possible. So what we tend to do is we make up these stories and, have a whole thing in our head that we just made up, but that we believe to be true because we have these facts and this truth. And then the stuff that we don't know, we just, filled in the blanks. All that does is cause anxiety and uneasiness. It doesn't help us to accept the truth. And number 3 is know that it is possible for multiple truths to be true at the same time, especially in relationships. So oftentimes we think that there can only be one supreme truth. And so we battle it out until somebody cries uncle and then gives up or denies their truth. When in reality, 2 even contradicting things can be true. Like that's just true in my life, just in the person that I am. There are 2 things that are contradicting, but both of them are true. Same thing. Your truth, my truth is not any more or less important than yours, right? And vice versa, right? Your truth isn't any more or less important than mine. So sometimes, it's a practice to just be able to be in the midst of other truths and not feel threatened with your own truth. And then the last one is more or less like a bonus one. So like if you really let's just say you are in your growing season right now and you really trying to dig deep, ask yourself the hard questions about the emotions that you feel toward the truth, and specifically the not so pleasant ones, right? Because, when you're feeling happy or, whatever, ecstatic because of the truth, there's not really most times really much to dig into there, right? It's when you have the pain, the hurt, the anger, the discomfort, right? Like the unfavorable emotions, going deep and asking yourself the whys, right? Until you get to the answer. Well, why do I feel like this? Why? So for example, I was watching this show, Ready to Love, right? So the one guy, he was been all over the world, went to France, whatever. And he's just yeah. Sex. I love sex. It's got to be sex. The woman I'm with, she has to be sexual, blah, blah. And they were in a group date and he just kept talking about it. I'm ugh, I was disgusted, right? Completely turned off. And so were some of the women in the group, right? So as soon as I had that, then I'm wait a minute, why am I having such a strong reaction to this man's truth? Because, his truth is that he is a very sexual man and he wanted a woman. He wanted to be clear. He wants a woman who is very sexual, who is open, and that's okay, right? That is his truth, right? And I respect him for being honest about it and saying, what it is up front, as opposed to, you want to wine and dine, just counting down to, that time. So then I had to be well, why did I have such a strong reaction? So what I got down to was when I was younger and men started noticing me and paying me attention and talking to me and blah, blah, blah. I never liked that, like the, what they call it, cat calls or whatever, because I never wanted somebody to just like me for my physical body or how I looked, right? Because I thought the person that I was inside, like just who I was as a person, was so much more doper than how I looked. You know what I mean? Like, I just didn't think that much about it. Like, for me, even as like a young person, as a kid, I'm like, it was really more important to me, like who a person was, right? Of course, physical attractiveness was important, but like, it was why I, sometimes I dated the nerds or, the like overweight people, because the people that they were just like, they were just dope people, like. So anyway, needless to say, I learned very quickly in the world that that's not necessarily the case, right? And not to say that that isn't the case, but especially when you're young, like that's just not the case. People are more concerned about, your physical and, thinking about, the lust part than who you are. And so that had nothing to do with this man's, like, with his truth. It was all because of something deep within me that I honestly had not even thought about, didn't really even think that it was an issue, but that apparently is still a thing for me. But on the surface, I would have just been thinking like, oh, he's just a pig and I just had a natural reaction overwhelming. Well, really, my issue with him and his truth was because of my own little personal hangups. And so I say that, and I tell you guys that example so that you can begin to ask yourself these kind of questions, right? Like, part of accepting the truth is we don't often go real deep about why we feel what we feel in general, right? So sometimes what can seem like, anger or whatever is really something else. And, after I had that whole conversation with myself, I don't care about the dude's truth, right? And I had a completely different perspective, like, well, at least he said it up front, right? But I had to clear up my hangups with it and really ask myself those tough questions. So listen, the truth ain't for suckers, right? Like, that should take a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to tell the truth and to be honest, moment after moment, day after day, person after person, like even with ourselves. So I'm going to close with a quote from Elvis Presley. Truth is like the sun. You can shut it out for a time, but it ain't going away. So till next time, friends, say la, pause, and think about that.